Hey guys, welcome out to Revolution this morning. We're going to just have a quick examination of the MEV Bible. And so the MEV Bible, it came out in 2014. Now, when the MEV came out, I was pretty excited. I thought, wow, this is going to be a, a professional Bible update of the King James. I'd been through a lot of the issues with the New King James by then, and I had read the New King James many, many, many times. Some parts of the New King James I'd read up to 500 times, like say, Second John. I would go through that every day when I was going through Hebrews 11. Every day I'd go through Hebrews 11, the love chapter, 1 Corinthians chapter 13. And so after years and years, you end up reading these things hundreds and hundreds of times. And so when I started to gravitate toward the King James, most of the study materials that I was using, they were directed towards the King James. And after a while, I started to think, hang on, this isn't saying the same thing. And especially in Proverbs, we were encouraged in our church at the time to read a proverb a day. So when I first got saved, I would read through Proverbs. I remember I memorized Proverbs. I think it was chapter 1, verses 1 to 7 in like the first week of my salvation. It's like I was into it, and I was reading from the New King James. Everyone I knew read the New King James. The Old King James just wasn't really a thing. But the more I started studying into these things, I realized that there were a lot of errors. And especially when you memorize things and then you grab an Old King James and you're reading it and you're like, hang on, that's very different. There's a huge difference here. And so I've over the years I've pointed out these differences, and many Textus Receptus people get very upset with me because they read the New King James as their personal Bible, just as I got upset when I was jumping on forums back in 2001, 2002, and people like Will Kinney were there. I'm thinking, who's this guy? And he's saying, oh, there's errors in New King James, and I was like, well, I can't argue with what he's saying. And so I'd study it out and I'd go, I can't argue with that. That is a clear error. But in my mind, I thought, well, there's also errors in the King James. But the more I studied, the more I looked into these things, the more I learnt, and the more I got rid of the basically my pride that was stopping me from just admitting that I was wrong, and many people around me are wrong. And so this is one of the things that I find people in this issue just simply won't stick with the facts and the stats and the data and just look at it plainly without emotion. What gets thrown around are terms, scarecrow terms, gaslit terms, King James only. Like I was listening to something by Stephen Boyce the other day, and he said, it was just a passing comment, but he said, oh, some people in the King James only camp, and he said this, he said, I'm talking about even TR people or the hyper King James only types. And so he sort of lumped, TR people are just sort of Lukey King James people. You know what I mean? They're not totally. No, he said they were cultic. That's right, the cultic King James types. So he said, oh, even TR people say that, and even the more cultic. It was like the more cultic. So you're a TR person, you're already cultic. But if you're a King James person, you're just in a cult, And so where does it say in the Bible that this is a cult? To say that, okay, this Bible is accurate, this Bible is correct, and this Bible doesn't have errors. There we go. That's the facts. That's the stats. That's the figures. And I'm talking with people on the internet who are trying to arrange debates for me. It seems like no one will debate me. I can't get anyone to debate me. If you know someone who, obviously it's someone who has a bit of, credibility in the critical text camp, But if you know someone who wants to debate me, I'll debate them on any verse, any scripture, any time. And so what we're finding is people pulling out of debates. And after a while, they go through some of my videos and they're like, oh, hang on, this guy's saying some pretty gnarly things. And they back out. And it just becomes this vague, like, oh, King James onlyism out there. These people, they're just nutters. And, it's like, no, deal with the facts and the stats and the figures. And so someone like Mark Ward, I mean, I understand, um, he comes across as like, very nice and, very, um, very accommodating to people and only, it's I'm talking from my heart sort of thing. But if you're actually on the other end of what he's saying, it's so vitriolic. It's just, it's a classic example of just um, someone being toxic but wearing a facade. He is so toxic, but he just wears this mask when he does his videos. And people are very easily manipulated and easily duped. I mean, we just have to look at the news. we just have to look at what's happening in the world and how easily people just fall into traps by the government, traps by banks, traps by pharmaceutical companies, traps by just yeah. And see, if you're alert to these things, you can see all sorts of things happening, and you see the majority of people just running like sheep to these things. And this is one of the things that I see happening with the Bible version issue. People are just going to the nicest guy, the sham wow guy, the guy who's got the smile, and oftentimes he's saying, "I love my King James brethren. I love this and I love that," and it's like when you're really listening to what he's saying, when you slow down and you listen to exactly what he's saying that we're basically illiterate dimwits, that we don't listen to what he says. We're just vile. We're just angry. We're just and it's just all ad hom. It's like, and this is the thing, we get mad at him for reasons. I say, okay, let's deal with the Hebrew and Greek here. Oh, no, I don't deal with that. I just deal with the archaic terminologies and things like that. It's like, well, why won't you deal with that? Why can't you, if I'm going to prove that something's right or wrong, of course we have to go back to the original languages. We have to use dictionaries. We have to, no, I don't do, he's just, he doesn't really want to engage people because what he's saying is completely wrong. Now, this is one of the Bibles, the modern English version, the MEV, is one of the Bibles that he promotes and says, if you're trapped in King James onlyism, you can go to this modern Bible and you'll get the true reading. And it doesn't take much. I mean, I would just recommend anyone go to Will Kinney's Brand Plucked website. I think it's brandplucked.webs.com or something like that. But if you just type in Will Kinney into Google, his website will come up. Or actually, some vampire thing comes up. There must be some famous guy called Will Kinney, which is hilarious. But yeah, it's just like he's a vampire, and I'm sure that people will probably use that. It's like Stephen Avery, making the Netflix series that came out trying to say that this guy Stephen Avery in America was innocent. A lot of people believe he is, and I do too. But Stephen Avery, it's like you type that in and this murderer comes up, and it's quite funny. But Jesus said, the world, everyone will hate you because of me. Yeah, Jesus was pretty clear about that. And so when everyone's speaking well of someone, you just got to be careful. And what I find is King James onlyists, and it doesn't matter which brand, if you're TR, one of the people, Zane Hodges, he's not a King James onlyist, according to how people think. See, the thing is, they have these terminologies, but they're all twisted, and they just can blanket term everyone as a King James onlyist if you don't follow the critical text. Basically, you're in a cult. So Zane Hodges, he was instrumental in, he was working with Fasted, and they worked on the majority text, and he was also involved with the New King James, I'm pretty sure. And so he's an example of one of the categories of King James onlyism in James White's book. And so how dumb is that? How stupid, Um, Now, according to Mark Ward, we should abandon the King James. We shouldn't have this, tribalism, version tribalism, he calls it. It's like, oh, this is my Bible, this is my. No, it's just basically people who recognize this Bible that I'm holding, it's King James, doesn't have the dumb and stupid errors that this other Bible has. It's not. I'm not forming a tribe about it. I mean, if I had a Bible that said, or like the Passion Bible, that many people are coming against the Passion Bible. It's like when the Message Bible came through, and people would start preaching against that, and I'd be like, well, you're going to take it to the next level and start talking about the stupid things in the NIV or the stupid things in the New American Standard Version, and how all these modern versions contradict each other in many places. No, we don't want to go there. Why? Because King James only is it's a scary thing, it's a scarecrow thing, and you're racist, sort of thing. It's like, okay, whatever. So Mark Ward wants us to get rid of our King James Bible. So let's just grab the Bible. I'll throw this straight in the bin, and let's get his MEV, and let's see how accurate it is just in this one place. I just want to show you this one example, and I think you will just go, wow, how did that happen? You will be shocked. And so let's just have a look. But firstly, I want to lay a bit of groundwork. So if you just type in MEV into Wikipedia, it says clearly, oh yeah, it's an update of the King James Version, retranslated from the Masoretic text and the Textus Receptus. So they're saying it's retranslated. So this isn't just an update. They've gone to the original Greek, the original Hebrew, Masoretic text, Textus. These type of terms are getting thrown around. It's like, wow, I want a TR Bible, but I want it readable. Let's just jump into it. So notice here it says the Ecumenical Committee on the Bible translation is composed of 47 American and English scholars from the three major branches of Christianity: Orthodox, Protestant, and Roman Catholic. Okay, so just sort of pointing that out just before we start this. So the committee retranslated the Textus Receptus and the Jacob Ben Hayim edition of the Masoretic text, using the King James Version as a reference. Okay, so they've translated. They're Hebrew scholars, they're Greek scholars. They're going through this, saying this is exactly what it says, in the Hebrew and Greek. And so we're only using the King James as a bit of a guide, a bit of so we can stick close to that. They had formal equivalents. Okay, so these guys sound like they know what they're doing. Okay, well, good on them. And so let's move on to the next little thing. So on their website, they have, when did the work begin? Okay, 2005. It finished in 2011. I guess they were thinking of, the 400-year anniversary, bring out this, Bible, but they'd only done the New Testament. They completed the Old Testament in 2014. Okay, so we've got all these churches that are involved: the Baptist Union of Great Britain, the Charismatic Episcopal Church, all these ones, AG, United Methodists, all those ones. Okay. What is the academic background of the Committee of Bible Translation? So, we're talking about people from the Assemblies of God Theological Seminary, the College of William and Mary, Evangel University, Fuller, Geneva. The list goes on. This is like a who's who of these guys are into theology. They're into the Greek. They're into the Hebrew. Notice they have the 47 translators. Now, this was an old number that was thrown around when I first started studying into these King James issues back in the 90s. Um, the the issue was that there was 47 translators, and I think it was like Alexander McClure. I think that's his name. I probably just butchered his name, but he said, well, someone said there was 47, and so that just became this figure that got thrown around. And usually, this is sort of like a figure that's still thrown around by people who don't really know that much about the issue. It's like, oh, 47, that's it, you know. There's been up to 60 detected who worked on the text, and so, but they got 47 here. So 47 is like you know, the cursory look at King James. You know, if you go through how many translators, if you probably typed it into Google, probably come up 47. You know, a lot of older books had that number in it, so they've gone with that specific 47 number. So they haven't gone with 50, they haven't gone with 42, they got 47. You know, they're trying to keep it King James-ish. You know, this is, man, we are like the King James guy. We are doing just like what they did, you know, sort of thing. It's like, wow, impressive, you know. You know, they've got missions. You know, this is all part of Charisma magazine. So they've been involved in this, and so you know, Charisma, they have Jim Baker and a whole bunch of other heretics, you know, um, on their payroll. You know, all you know, basically they're publishing their books, and so Jim Baker obviously does a well, you know, he talks about this version as if it's you know the best thing, and he talks about how the prosperity doctrine is destroyed through this. You know, he's like a former prosperity teacher, and now he's you know selling these prepper kits online. You know, you can save your family if you've got these kits. You know, and you can buy food and you know dry powdered stuff. So when the you know great tribulation happens, you can live, you can survive, you and your family can eat, you can make pancakes, you can make mashed potatoes, you just add water, you know, and you can turn it into a toilet when you want. And the buckets, you know, they turn into toilets, you know, because you got to go somewhere, you know, and all this sort of stuff. But anyway, we won't talk about Jim Baker, or we could be here all day just cracking jokes about it. And but see, this is the thing. This is how duped people are. I mean, we look at something like Scientology and we think, how on earth, you know? But there are deceiving spirits out there. You know, Jehovah's Witnesses, and we look at it and we say, how can anyone believe that? Yeah, it's just rubbish. It's easily disproven. This is one of the things. How can anyone not not see the errors in the modern Bibles? And so this is one of the things, you know, silly me. I used to think that if I just pointed out the errors, people would go, yeah, there's an error there. I've got to look into this. No, people go, oh, it's an error. No, and they double down. It's like, then people aren't interested in truth. It's like Martin Luther, he said people actually want to be deceived. People are craving to be deceived, they're craving deception. It's so bizarre. And so I'm thinking, okay, I'll show them the errors in this Bible, and they'll go, "Wow, that's not a good Bible," or "That's a Bible with mistakes in it." You know, not oh well, the King James has these mistakes. You know, they just instead of dealing with the issue, that they'll just jump to another thing, or you know, other Bibles have that reading too, or you know, no Bible's perfect, and all this sort of stuff. And it's like, let's just leave all the emotions behind. Let's just you know leave the sham wow Mark Ward, you know, oh my brethren, my poor lost brethren who you know can't even use a dictionary, those poor guys are in a cult, and I'm sacrificing my time and my life and my money trying to help them. And it's like, let's leave all that behind. Let's just look at the facts and the stats. Okay, so on their website they have you know what are good versions, or what are good verses to compare. So you know they're comparing Tyndale, you know 1611 and 1769 New King James, and so they're sort of showing that it's pretty much very much the same, you know. um, Now, I just want to show you, this is just a little clip, and this is on the Jim Baker Show. So this is one of the main guys behind it. And so Charisma founder and editor, Steve Strang, he shares why he got involved with this new version of the Bible. So let's just listen to what he says.
While sticking very, very, very closely to what the original Hebrew and Greek was in a way that was understandable. You know, when
Okay, so he's saying that they went to the original Hebrew and Greek in a way that was understandable. Kudos to him. That's great. That's all we could ask for in a Bible translation. And if they've got the Textus Receptus, they've got the Masoretic text. I mean, I understand that some of the principles of Bible translation, even if you have the correct text, you probably unless you're at the skill of the King James translators, you'll still get a strange reading. But good on him. These guys are honest guys. Honest. They're trying. They've got these 47 awesome scholars. And so, we got more comparisons there on their website. We have some endorsements, the Baptist Union, chaplaincy of full gospel churches. This is exactly what we needed. We needed this. And I was just watching before, it was not Dan Brown. What's his name? Oh, that's terrible. Michael Brown. Michael Brown gave a glowing endorsement. He's saying, I grew up on the King James. And he's like, I went to the New King James. It wasn't as good. Modern Bibles aren't as good. And he's sort of making this argument that he prefers the King James type of text. But he doesn't. On his show, he is constantly coming against the Textus Receptus and just sort of lumps it in with the King James type of thing. And so then he's basically endorsing a TR Bible and saying this is the best. And so let's just, yes, it's quite amazing how, let me just put it this way. This is amazing how dumb and how idiotic these types of people are. And now, if you're like, oh, you're being nasty, you're just being vitriolic, you're just being, King James only. These guys are angry, and these guys. If I had a maths book, right? If I just grabbed off the shelf was maths, and I opened up and said 1 + 1 = 3, and I said, this is the dumbest thing. It's not being angry; it's just being factual. And this is the problem: is people are so sucked in by the Hillsongy type church, by the Michael Brown, where he was a major player in the Pensacola revival, where Amber, what was her name? Amy Ward. She got up on stage and she was shaking and falling on the ground and saying the revival's coming. And they used to just stand in front of the microphone and shake like this for ages, and then they'll all be on the floor, and the pastor couldn't get up for 5 hours. They had to help him to the toilet. The whole Toronto blessing, laughing revival, Benny Hinn forehead slapping sort of thing. That's what Michael Brown is. That's his culture. And then he's got this Line of Fire radio thing, and he talks about all these issues. But deep down, he revival to him is that. He's never come out and said that was ever wrong. He might say, oh, there was excesses and there's a few weirdos here and there, but that happens everywhere. But it's like people are so easily sucked in. When we see the laughing revival, the sheep just run to it. And this is what I see, the modern Bibles. People are running to these modern Bibles. They don't want to know the facts about them. They want the feels. They want to feel good. They want the ShamWow guy with a smile to say, oh, guys, this is the best. They want Mark Ward there saying, wow, this is just so nice. And, this will solve all the world's problems. Let's just sing Kumbaya. And I listen to Mark Ward say all this stuff, and I'm just like, man, this is just so obvious. Like, can't people see through this rubbish? You know what I mean? And Mark Ward's paid by Lexham. Lexham have a Catholic branch, of course. They have Logos. which is making a killing. They're making so much money. But then they have Verbum, which is the Catholic edification branch, for the Catholics, of course, because you've got to have the Catholics reading their Bibles, and all the other Mary stuff. So anyway, we've got these glowing endorsements. Okay, so we're getting somewhere. Okay, you can snavel up these Bibles here. They've got the Spirit-led Woman's Bible, and man, they are killing it. So they've got the parallel Bible. They've thought, well, let's bring this out, the King James version with the MEV. Let's bring that out. Let's look at it, verse comparisons. We're showing everyone we're above board. Okay. There you go. You can grab imitation leather one for $15. That's reasonable. That's good. These guys, they're doing well. Okay. So it's a shame that people are settling for poor modern translations of the Textus Receptus. The modern English version, the MEV, is a great disappointment. They claim on their website that it's been translated by 47 men produced in the King James tradition. So if you don't know what the King James tradition is, the King James translators, they had, like I said, there's about 60 that have been detected. So there was actually 6 groups, so it makes the maths pretty easy. So just say you had 10 people in each group. You got these 6 groups. Now, they were given certain portions of the Bible. And so just say you were given the Gospels, and the 4 Gospels and the book of Revelation. You were to spend your time on those, translating them. So at first, all the 10 people in that one committee were to translate Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and Revelation by themselves. Okay, so that's what they were told to do. So they were to use the Bishop's Bible as a guide, sort of like a draft, but they were to use the original Greek or Hebrew, whatever they were working on. And so the original languages overrode any, Bishop's Bible. People are like, oh, it's a revision of the Bishop's Bible. It's like, it's actually a translation from the Hebrew, from the Greek. It says that in the cover. But they did have a guide. They already had other previous translations, so they used those as a guide, and they departed from the translation quite a fair bit, going with the originals. And so we look at them, these 10 guys, each one of them has to do their own translation. Then they are to bring it to their own company, and then to amalgamate those 10 into one translation. Okay, so each group does this. So you've got these 6 groups. They've all got their one done. So you've got 60 people who have translated their portion. They've brought them together, and then they've all worked on it to bring one. And then so they send that one off to the other groups. So just say, we're doing the Gospels and Revelation. We send ours off to the other 5 groups, and they look at it, they study it, they think about it, and they mark up where, there's issues, where there's errors, where there's, whatever. Then they send that back to the group. Then they amend it according to, oh yeah, well, that's a good, point they've made there. Let's go with that reading. And so they're the whole committee, the 60 people are deeply involved in this process. And then in the end, there's other people who look over it, who go over the stylistic. There might just be certain ways that shall and will and could and should and these type of words, they just smoothed out everything. They just went through and they smoothed out a lot of these readings, and so that's sort of like the stylistic approach on the end of it. So they had other translators go over it. So it's been counted that the King James was translated up to 14 times. Now, it's quite interesting when you go through that whole process of how it was all done. So that's what they're claiming. The MEV guys are claiming that this is what they've done, okay? So I'm just going to show you how this is a complete fabrication. The 47 number is used because some old figures shown about concerning the King James Version has the 47 as the official number of the translators, but more recent figures are somewhere between 57 and 60. But perhaps 47 were alive, when it was published. So the 47 translators is just a sales pitch. It's merely to create a nostalgic association with the King James so that people would assume that it went through the same cross-checking filtration process that the 1611 did, which was at least 14 times according to Bancroft's translation rules. So I doubt, when we look at this example, I doubt it even went through 2 cross-checks. I doubt that they even had a proper look at this at all. This is amazing. This example, you'll just see it and just go, oh no. But this is the Bible that Mark Ward wants you to get, because the scholars are so good. And why would these cultic, dumb, stupid, idiot King James moron that he loves, why would they not? Why would you not partake? It's like, this is manna from heaven, Let's have a look. Let's check this issue out. In Isaiah chapter 58, verse 8. Let's just go there. I want to show you this in real time in Bible Gateway. Okay. This is, actually, you can see from the top here. So this is the MEV in this list. This is the authorized version. I put the New King James there just to show the New King James didn't make this silly error. They many other times they had 1 + 1 = 3, but here they didn't. They actually did a way better job. They had 130 guys working on it. Okay, so let's go to verse 8. So I'll read it in the King James first. Then shall thy light break forth as the morning, and thy health shall spring forth speedily, and thy righteousness shall go before thee, and the glory of the Lord shall be thy reward. Okay, so notice that word reward. So what do we have in the New King James? It says the same thing basically, and it says the Lord shall be your rear guard. Okay, because that's what reward just means, the back of you, the rear guard. MEV. Okay, don't burst out laughing. This is serious, The glory of the Lord shall be your reward. Oh. But no other Bible in history says reward. Where did they get that from? Okay. In Isaiah chapter 58, verse 8, they changed the King James Version's reward, pronounced as reward, which is often modernized as rear guard. They changed it into reward. This reveals that the MEV's 47 translators totally misunderstood the correct meaning of the archaic word reward. It's like R-E-R-E, is like rear ward. And also that they really didn't do any real checks like the 1611 guys did. Okay, so it actually gets worse. Like, let's just hear me out for a sec. These are the facts. I know if you read the MEV, you're probably really upset with me right now. You're probably, Googling, Nick says is hateful. Is he a racist? Is he a psycho? It's like, no, these are just the facts, the stats. I'm sorry that I'm not the sham wow guy. I'm not Mark Ward. Just, oh, you guys, I love you guys, and all this sort of stuff. I'm just going to give you the facts. There mightn't be. It's just meat. There's no vegetables here. It's just the meat. I'm trying to be as nice as possible. It is clearly an error, and he reveals their incompetence. It appears that they just knew the King James Version's reward and assumed that it was reward. And they didn't even check. Listen to this. They didn't even check the New King James. Didn't even look at it. I mean, if you're doing a Textus Receptus version, wouldn't you have Jay Green's big, huge honking, at least having interlinear Bible there. Going through that, wouldn't you have that on your lap, as you're going through it? Wouldn't you have, the New King James open? Wouldn't you have Green's, the modern King James version? He's even in this one, he's got the literal version in his big one. Wouldn't you have the King James version 2000? Even though it's Seventh Day Adventist based, but wouldn't you at least you have that open or have it on your screen open, or and look at what they've put in these places. Just do a bit of cross examining. The thing is, actually, I'm just gonna have a quick look here. Isaiah 58. Okay, so let's have a look at it. Even if they're using this Hebrew, which it's old school, but it's like, let's have a look. Isaiah 58. It's a bit hard to check that out. I don't want to have a big lag in the middle of this video. So if it was one person, now I've worked on the King James Version 2016 edition, so I'm not against updates. I'm like, okay, cool, because I deal with foreigners a lot, and I'm working on a foreign Bible translation. So many times we're examining and looking at what the King James says, and sometimes it's like, well, rather than have to explain everything all the time, it's like, well, just go through the one that I've written there. It has it based in the basic English, and so we've been using my translation as a base, and obviously we're going through Textus Receptus material as well, and we're going through all these other versions, looking at them, making sure if there's something different that cries out. It's like, well, okay, let's just check this. So how did all the 47 translators get this wrong here? I can tell you from experience, from doing Bible translation, that this is just one guy. And he had reward here. It's an archaic term, so this is exactly why they're doing their Bible, to update this type of term. Okay. They saw reward, and they just assumed that it was reward, and that's what they've done. This shows they didn't go to the Hebrew. This is not a translation of the Hebrew. If they actually went through the Hebrew, they would have, something like rear guard or something like that. Or there's actually contention over how that should be translated in modern versions, but it's like, whatever. But so your rear guard, it's never translated as reward. The only reason you would translate it as reward is because you assume that's what that word meant. So this shows, so imagine the first person who went through, he saw this and went, oh, that should be reward, and he did it. Okay, so he's made it into reward. That shows that he wasn't translating firstly from the Hebrew. He was looking at the King James and just updating the words. Okay? So all that we've gone through, this guy, have a listen.
To it. So our goal and vision was to try to make God's word accessible to more people to understand, while sticking very, very, very closely to what the original Hebrew and Greek was, in a way that was understandable.
Okay, so they're sticking to the Hebrew and Greek in a way that's understandable. Whoops. And so, sorry, I've just lost my page there. In a way that's understandable. Okay, so what does the 1611 say here? Let's just have a quick look. Verse 8, shall be thy reward, or reward. Okay, old school way of saying it, but they just assumed that it was reward. It doesn't mean reward. The Lord shall be your reward. No, it means he'll be your rear guard. Because just look at the context, I mean, this isn't even an issue. No one's saying that this isn't the reading. The glory of the Lord shall be your reward, because he talks about he shall go before thee. Okay, so, and thy righteousness shall go before thee. So, and then the glory of the Lord shall be your reward, your reward, your back guard. And the glory of the Lord's going to protect your back. God's got your back, not God is your reward. That is just, how can you make an error like that? So one person, we can understand, made that error. Okay, that's fine. So the second person came along and was like reading through it and checking, the Hebrew. These are Hebrew scholars and all. They're checking their Hebrew. They're looking through the, oh yeah, it says reward. Did they really check the Hebrew? And can you imagine if they actually did this in the style of the King James translators? So you had, obviously the maths is more difficult with the 47 guys, but let's just go with what I said before. Just say there's 10 in each group. So these guys all go home and they all translate it. Then they all come together and they make one principal one. Now, if one of these guys had reward there, let's say, hey, Lancelot Andrews, we know you know 21 languages, and these six of them are ancient languages and all the rest of it. But you got this wrong. Reward, reward, not reward. And they go, oh, how embarrassing. And look, we won't tell anyone. I know this is really embarrassing for a scholar of your capability to make this dumb, this absolutely retarded mistake. This is like, boom. How can one person even make this mistake? But, obviously, it's going through the filtration process of 10 of us, in this committee. We'll produce the one principal one, and we'll leave your little funny thing out. They'd all have a bit of a laugh and say, oh, I was trying to rush through it. Sorry, guys, And, and then imagine if it did get through that reading, just somehow, just got through. Then they gave it to the other 5 committees, and all the other 50 guys read it. They would catch on. They would, hang on, this is wrong. And so this is what I'm saying. Can you see now why this example shows the MEV didn't go to the original languages? They lied to you, okay? They didn't produce their own new translation. They lied to you. They have made an error that is a rookie error. I mean, someone, even if they're in high school and they were told to do this sort of stuff, they would double check. At least check the New King James. At least check another Bible. Not they're just going to go through and just check that, and the other 6 guys missed it all, and they end up with this reading. And so, how did they miss all that? Even the final draft, how did they miss that? So, with all the glowing endorsements that the MEV gets, from these scholars, it just shows you how low the standards are, how low and how bad these modern Bibles are. So like I said, I've got my King James in the bin. I'm getting my brand new MEV. It's all shiny and everything. Yay. I read it. I'm looking at videos, going, "Wow, this is a TR Bible." I'm a TR guy. I'm I'm going through this, saying this is translated so well, and I get to this point. And what do I do with that? What do you do with that? This is not just translating, um, 1984 or something into Spanish, or translating um, Tolstoy from Russian into English, or translating Shakespeare into Italian or something. This is the words of God, the Bible. And the ShamWow advertising guys have pulled the wool over people's eyes. They can't see the glaring mistakes in this Bible. There's heaps more. I'm going to show you another mistake that's in the New King James as well. That just shows it just blows these Bibles out of the water. Now, what do you do with this? Now, if I had a Bible that said God so hated the world that he didn't give his only begotten Son, like even if the whole rest of the Bible was 100% accurate, it's like if it has this in it, it's like, man, that's a bad reading. Do you want to hand that out on the streets and say this is the word of God? Um, this example shows that everything they've said about their Bible is just trash. They went with reward, which no other Bible in history. It's just like this is just, it's so, I can't even find the word. I can't find the word without being crass, or without Mark Ward saying how bombastic, or something like that. But it's like, I mean, the MEV departs from the King James Version and the Hebrew and Greek text hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. And I've read enough of it. Just go through the Psalms. If you compare the Psalms with the King James, after, 4 or 5 Psalms, you're like, hang on, is that like half a verse missing? Is this really based on the Hebrew? And they are just chopping and changing and doing whatever they want. And I'll just show you one more example. Now, if we go to the King James, when we're talking about the people who came out of Israel, it says in Hebrews chapter 3, verse 16, it says, for some, when they had heard, did provoke, howbeit not all that came out of Egypt by Moses. So some, when they heard, they did provoke. Okay, so some of them provoked God. Howbeit not all of them did. Let's talk about Joshua and Caleb, but not all of them provoked God. That came out of Egypt by Moses. So but some did. The vast majority did, actually. Now let's look at the MEV. For who were they who heard and rebelled? So it's changed into a question. So okay, for who, some is changed to who. It's okay. For who were they who heard and rebelled? Was it not all who came out of Egypt led by Moses? And so it's basically saying that everyone rebelled. It says instead of however, not all that came out of Egypt, rebelled. It says, was it not all? It's rhetorical, so it's basically you're supposed to answer this with like, yeah, well, and so who heard and rebelled? Wasn't it everyone? That's basically what it's saying. And so the MEV changes the wording from the King James Version from a statement to a question. They changed the King James Version and made an untruth, because we know from the Old Testament that Joshua and Caleb didn't rebel and came out with Moses. The King James Version clearly says that some, that is, most of the older generation of Israel. It says, howbeit not all, meaning Joshua and Caleb, did provoke. The MEV says that everyone who came out of Egypt rebelled. This is clearly a mistranslation and ruins the basic Old Testament historical narrative. This is an error in the New King James as well. Okay, so it's not just an MEV issue. These two examples reveal the MEV is just another modern trash version designed to fill the shelves of bookshops and the pockets of publishers. But what do we expect? The Ecumenical Committee on the Bible Translation Committee is composed of 47 American English scholars from three major branches of Christendom. Christendom, whoops, got golden mouth in there somehow. Orthodox, Protestant, and Roman Catholic. And so, yeah, for some, when they had heard, did provoke, howbeit not all that came out, Joshua and Caleb, but they have everyone provoked. They all did. Who did it? They all did it. So this is just another example, and the New King James makes this mistake, and it shows you that it ruins the Old Testament narrative. It destroys what the King James is trying to say here. And the New King James translators were showing this. They were showing this error, and they haven't done an update in 40 years. And so they were just like, that's it. Well, we're not going to do it. We're not going to change it. That's the reading. And so you just have this contradiction in your Bible. And so this is one of the things. Like, I've read the New King James many, many times. Some places up to 500 times. And probably more, because that was just what I'd counted. I'd probably read it just in my normal readings like many, many times. And so then, and I memorized, I thought the New King James, I'm like, this is the Bible. And even the marginal notes and everything, I used to go through and cross them all out. I hated that. I used to actually specifically get the ones that didn't have all the marginal notes in it. But after a while, I was just like, this text is not accurate. And when I compared the King James didn't have, let me just say it very clearly, didn't have these dumb, stupid errors like this. This is a contradiction. Now, anyone who is interested in truth, this should disturb them. And like I said, how much error in your Bible is acceptable? Well, see, this is the thing. People are told, the King James's errors all over the place, and usually people have a list of like 500 errors or something like that. And I just go, okay, I'll go through the first 5 if I can easily find out, logical, reasonable explanations for those. What's the point in going through the rest of them if you've already been wrong? I mean, the thing is, usually you just go through one of them. If it's wrong, it's like they should be going, we'll check our list again. But I find people just give me a list, and I'm like, well, actually, that word there, have a look at it. No other Bible translation actually has the reading that you're saying is an error here. All the Bible translations in the whole entire world actually agree with the King James here. So, but you're saying it's an error. So do you go against all the Bible? And they're like, oh, yeah, what about the next one? And it's like, yeah, I just find I'm expecting the critical text guys to be academic. I'm a layman. I always admit that I am. I'm just plodding along, and I'm just pointing out, hang on, 1 + 1 equals, they're saying it equals 3. That's wrong. That's dumb. That's silly. That's retarded. And they're like, oh, you're just such a bully. You're so angry. You're a King James onlyist. You're like the guy in the Deliverance movie, the guy playing the banjo on the porch. You're an idiot. What, for pointing out these glaring errors? I mean, reward. I mean, Mark Ward, he wants me to go, this is my MEV. This is my MEV, and I trust it 100%. Like imagine if I converted. Okay, I've watched nearly every one of Mark Ward's videos. I'm so absolutely unconvinced in what he says that I'm just amazed that so many people are running to what he says, and going, oh, we love you, Mark. You're such a lovely guy and all this. I'm just going, man, you are so toxic. What you're saying is so fake and so untrue. Okay, so let's leave the King James. Let's go with the MEV. Okay, so imagine if I've done that. Hi, Mark. Remember me? I'm Nick Sayers. I was making all those horrible, nasty videos online and saying these terrible things about everyone. I'm a cultist. I'm a cultist. Remember, you said King James only, cultism and extremism and all this stuff. And, Stephen Boyce has said that, and James White said I'm in a cult. So pretty much everyone's saying I'm in a cult. I was tired of being in the cult, so I got rid of my King James, picked up a modern Bible, started reading through it, and I'm convinced this is the best. Good on you, mate. And that's what he wants me to do. But then, thinking people go through and they're like, let's do a Bible study today. Okay, where are we up to? Okay, we're in Isaiah chapter 58. Okay, let's read through. What does your Bible say? Oh, my Bible says reward. Huh? No, Mark Ward is correct. It just must be like, hey, look, there's another King James only cultist over there. There's a rabbit over there. Let's just throw dust in the air and let's just pretend that it doesn't say 1 + 1 = 3. That it isn't a stupid error. That basically we should really be getting the MEV and throwing it in the bin and getting our King James back and saying, well, hey, some of the words might be a bit old, but at least it hasn't got dumb errors in it, like rookie errors. Rookie errors. Like if this was a book of mathematics, it's like saying 1 + 1 = 3. It's so dumb. It's got the wrong answers, and the people who well, I'm holding up the wrong one. People who made the MEV, they're claiming that they did what the King James translators did. Lie. So will someone like Mark Ward or any of these critical text guys, will they admit that that's a lie? Will they just admit and say, well, yeah, that they got it really wrong there? That they, um, you know, the the issue is they didn't follow the King James methodology. They didn't go to the Hebrew. They didn't do cross-referencing checks. They didn't go to other Textus Receptus versions. So how do they know that their Bible is better than the new? They're like, yeah, our Bible is a bit better than the New King James because it's sort of like a halfway trend. How do they know if they can't pick this up? And so I'm calling these guys out as just fakes. Anyone can see they're a fake just by going through this. This is just one example. I could give you hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of examples of stupid readings in the MEV. But it's like, this one, they've already made a ton of money on it. It'll probably just fizz out and they'll bring out another one and it'll have another whole bunch of errors in it and that'll fizz it. And, what do we, King James only guys have to spend our whole life just running around with the, 400 English Bibles with all these mistakes in it? Or we can just trust in the King James, you know what I mean? In the tried, true, and tested King James. And the thing is, I'm open to being rebuked on this. Okay, I will debate anyone on this issue. I'll debate any of the translators. I'll debate Mark Ward himself. I'll debate James White. I'll debate absolutely anyone on this issue because I've done the homework. How can you argue against this? See, that's the thing. They just want to ignore that I even exist because I'm not just the dumb, guy like, oh, I was reading the King James Bible for 30 years because my daddy did it, my great granddaddy did it, and so I did it. No, I'm like, I was raised an atheist. I've become a born again Christian. I've read the New King James over and over. I've read the MEV. I've compared these things, and I'm pointing out where there are errors. And so, who'd want to debate against that? I mean, and I challenge these guys. And anyone watching this video, send this video to Mark Ward, send it to James White, send it to people and say, look, he's challenging a debate on this verse, or even on Hebrews 3:16, or anything else that I brought up. I will debate it. And the thing is, I've done my homework on this and I will win because what we're finding is no one will debate me anymore. They used to be like, oh, I'll debate this guy, and then I'm just made them look like idiots. Well, in a sense, it's like I know that a lot of these guys they go to seminary, they're just told King James onlyism is a cult. And they're like, oh, okay. It's just like, Seventh day Adventism is a cult, or Jehovah's Witnesses are a cult. Okay, here's this other one. Next, we're going to look at King James onlyism. Let's look at Sam Gibb, Peter Ruckman, these other guys. And it's like, they're just given this mindset and they go out into the world and they think that that's reality, where it's not. The King James has been stable for 400 years. The Textus Receptus, the printed text, very stable for 100 years before that. And then we're looking at the Byzantine, the most cohesive group of texts out there, and it's the vast majority of everything. It's the embarrassment of riches, really. So we have all this evidence. We have early church writings that back it up. We have versions. We have the Latin. We have, pretty much everything is like Textus Receptus. I mean, in the Reformation, it was like, this is the received text. Why is it the received text? Because it's sort of like the only thing there. Up until, basically Westcott and Hort, there was nothing that was competing. Sure, there was a few spatterings of, Luckman and Tischendorf and, a few other guys did a few things here and there. But Westcott and Hort was like, this is the text. And they use Unitarians. I'll debate anyone on this. They used Unitarian, George Van Smith and other Unitarians, and they used these guys to produce their text. Now, the Trinitarian Bible Society had to be formulated in 1831 because there were so many Unitarians in the Bible Society that the Trinitarians left. Most of the Trinitarians left, or a vast majority of them. And they formulated the Trinitarian Bible Society. So what have you got left? The Unitarian Bible Society, and of course they're going to attack all the things on the deity of Christ, all the things that modern Bibles take away now. And so the thing is, I'm not giving you the ShamWow version. I'm not saying I love my critical text brothers so much, and I bleed over them. My pillow is wet with tears for the. I'm not going to do the Mark Ward thing with you. Just going to give you the facts and point this out and say, isn't this a dumb, stupid error? And be a man and admit this is a dumb, stupid error. It's a dumb, stupid Bible that needs to be hoiked into the bin. It's just dumb. It's got dumb readings. I've been working on the King James update. So I go through these Bibles. I check them. I look at them. I examine them. And I've basically stopped even looking at the modern English version because there's so many errors. I mean, compared to the New King James, this is just, say on a level of 1 to 10, King James is 10. Yeah, 100% correct, accurate, well done. And it did two things. It finalized the Textus Receptus, which, that people have redone and, Beza's text and formulated the Scrivener text. But so it finalized that, but it also is an accurate translation. Okay, so 10 out of 10. These guys did that. New King James, you're probably looking at about, an 8.5. In the New Testament, probably about an 8.5. In the Old Testament, probably about a 7. The MEV is probably about a 6 or a 7 all the way through. When you're looking at the ESV and other ones, I mean, you're just looking at number 2s. It's like, it's so bad that it's just contradiction. You can, if you rape someone, you have to marry them. All this sort of stuff. It's in the NIV, it's in the ESV. It's not in the King James. When you're out street preaching and people say, "Oh, the Bible says you have to marry your rapist," it's like, nah, you got the wrong Bible there. What are you reading, a Jehovah's Witness one or the Satanic Bible? What you? Oh no, it's the ESV. Okay, wow, didn't know it was that bad. And you start to learn these things. You start to realize that a lot of mockery against the Bible is because of these modern versions coming out with all sorts of strange and weird and Gnostic and illiterate rubbish. So I'm a sort of black and white type of guy. It's either good or it's bad. Okay, so it's like King James good, MEV bad. In the bin. What else can I say? And so I would like Mark Ward, if he's watched this video, to convince me of getting again. I mean, I used to own dozens of New King James versions. I've handed out thousands of New King James versions. I would like for him to convince me on a logical level of going with the MEV or going with the New King James. I would like for him to convince me to do that, and showing why I should just overlook these verses like this. And at the end of the day, it's like, how can he? What could Mark Ward say? Oh, Nick, you've got a mindset. You've been deceived by King James only people and people like D.A. Wade and these other people. No. Usually, I'm not all into everything everyone else is saying. Usually, I'm going to Bible Gateway or I'm going to Bible Hub and I'm looking and going, okay, that one says that one says that one says that. Why is it saying that? Checking it, going through, looking at the Hebrew, looking at the Greek, looking at other translation, and studying it all out. I'm like, hang on, look, guys, this is what I finished with. Where'd you learn that from? Ruckman? Are you a cultist? Did you get that from Gip? It's just like, no, it's just the facts and the stats. 1 plus 1 equals 3 here on their Bible. But in the King James, 1 plus 1 equals 2. It all adds up, You're like, no, you're a cultist. You're thinking for yourself. You're a cultist and you have cult leaders, even though, I hadn't even heard of Ruckman. I was comparing New King James and Old King James and going through and saying, that word's missing. That word's changed. Things like Hebrews 3:16, that's a contradiction. People did come out of the promised land led by Moses. It's like, oh my gosh, this is a lie. This is a deception. So anyway, I think you've at the end of this video, you can understand why I said that this verse just shows you why I think MEV is trash, and why I think that this verse just, it writes off the whole concept that they translated like the King James, that they actually went to the Hebrew, that they actually are a better translation than New King James even, because they didn't even check that. They did these cross references and all that. It's probably just one guy. And unfortunately, this is how low the bar is in Bible translation. So this isn't even like the worst issue. This is just one that people can go, yeah, that's dumb. I mean, just go to Wiktionary. Look up the word, an obsolete spelling of rearward in the archaic and historical military sense of rear guard. And so, a backside of an army, the forces at the rear. It's, it's online. People can just look it up. Do the study yourself. Prove me wrong on this. This is the thing. People are like, oh, Nick Sayers, Stephen Boyce is going around saying I'm a stalker. He's just unhinged. He's a stalker. All the rest. It's because I've got a truth, and I'm just like, this is true. This is true. This is true, and I won't budge from it. Where they're hoping that I just shut my mouth. And if you look at the videos where after the debate with Stephen Boyce, I show where Stephen Boyce got a whole bunch of things wrong and just brought up a whole bunch of rubbish. It's not because of stalking issues. It's because of truth. The thing is, these guys are like, I'm an apologist and all the rest of it. And most of these guys are raised in church, And And what I find is church people seem to be the most horrible liars. That's what I'm finding. People who have been raised in church, they will just lie and think they can actually get away with it. When I went from atheism, raised as an atheist, believing that we come from monkeys and behaving like an ape, and then I become a born again Christian, one of the main things was I've got to tell the truth from now on. I've got to be honest with myself. And so I wasn't involved in a denomination. I wasn't trying to please anyone. Everyone was against me. Everyone already. It's like the whole mindset of my whole culture that I was in was just like, you become a what? A Christian? Oh no. Why'd you do that? You idiot. It's like, what? Here, have a beer, have a smoke, have a this, and you're like, I don't do that anymore. I'm changed. I've become a Christian. And so I'm already swimming against the tide. And what I find is a lot of these church people, they've been swimming down these rivers and not swimming against the tide for so long that they're actually, when deception and things like that come flowing into the river, they're just swimming along with it. They're not really fighting. They're not really interested in truth. And I'm talking about ultimate truth, total 100%. Let's get to the bottom of this issue. They'll sort of realize that something could prove them wrong or make them look like they've been wrong in the past, and let's just not talk about it. Let's just leave it. And so when someone like me is like, yeah, no, let's bring it up again. Let's bring it up again. Let's bring it up again. They're like, shut up. No, and they'll just attack you. And it's like, are you really interested in truth? This is the modern day apologists. These are the modern day apologists. Will they admit when they're wrong? And I'd love for them to point out where I'm wrong, because I enjoy that. It's like, oh yeah, I've been wrong. Okay, fine. I'll change. But the thing is, these things are pointing out. Well, shouldn't Mark Ward, do a video and say, yes, well, I actually watched Nick Sayers' video and he had a concerning point about the MEV, and we realised that it hadn't been translated properly, and obviously they didn't even go to other English versions, let alone go into Hebrew. It obviously wasn't cross-checked like the original King James, and so I'm sorry, guys, I've been promoting a Bible that's just pretty trashy. Wouldn't he do a video like that, or wouldn't he try and explain? No, let's just avoid that. Let's just talk about halt. Halt is just because people have a German influence, and they think halt is a German word as well. And people like, if you ask them out of context, what does halt mean? Like, oh, stop, because it's halt, all these Nazi movies that people have been watching. And it's like, he's just going on about these issues, and it's like, but at the same time, he's pointing, use the MEV. Why wouldn't anyone use the MEV? Why would a TR person refrain from using it? Why would you? And it's like, because it's translated poorly, because they're lying to me. Why would I insult my intelligence and go and read their rubbish? It's just rubbish. And so I'm not going to read it. Sorry, it haven't convinced me that this is going to, take over the King James. So anyway, I'll just see if there's any questions. We've got 12 views here. No one in the chat yet. I'll have a quick look at my phone. Okay, so we've got no one in the chat. That's fine. Let me know if you want me to do any more videos on the MEV, but the MEV to me is just like an aberration. It's just a nothing, and I think it's just a trashy version of the New King James. That's all it is. And the New King James is way better. And in many times, the New King James is accurate. But it's, obviously, I've just shown you one example. I've found about 500 errors in the New Testament with the New King James. And so with these type of claims, I mean, surely Mark Ward or someone would be interested in me getting on their program and saying, this is an error, that's an error, this is an error. Like I've pointed out here. I mean, it's but people aren't interested in that. They don't want this absolute truth where someone just comes along and says, "Look, I've been studying this issue, this particular verse for like 10 years. Here's what I've got to say about it." That they sort of want to dance around it and then go on. Let's move on. Let's look at these other TR editions and deal with the fact that the New King James has about 500 departures from the King James. It has, from what I can gather, probably about 100 departures from the TR. Now I know Will Kinney's got it on his page that there's 47. Sorry, 47. 20. Sorry, I just saw 47. I mentioned it. It's early. I haven't had a coffee. But I would say there's probably about 100 departures from the TR because just constantly I'm just seeing things that just say differently. And being involved in New Testament translation work into other languages, I'm constantly looking at New King James, constantly looking at other versions and examining things and go, that's a different reading. Why is it matching with the critical text? And then you look at it and it's like, well, because they've followed the critical text reading. Simple as that. A lot of the guys who worked on the New King James had worked on the NIV. Some of the guys had worked on the NIV. They'd worked on other translations, previous translations, and so none of them were TR people. And so, what would we expect from these guys? Okay, thanks for joining us, guys. God bless you. Hopefully, you enjoyed this, and I'll see you